The first one is from Pushkar 2003, who says, how do you motivate yourself to study? This is the classic.
Oh boy, I think there has to be the distinction that you draw between motivation and discipline.
Oh, tell me more.
I think it's good to be motivated to study. I think it's much more important to be disciplined. In that, motivation is whatever takes you on the day. You know, you wake up and you think, oh yeah, I'm really fired up. For me, when I was doing a physics degree, I would be like, oh, I really want to do optics today. Great, we're going to look at that. Discipline is getting up at 9 every day, you know, to get to the library for 9 every day and doing it day after day after day. I think that is the more important thing. And you accept the fact that you're not going to feel fired up to do it every morning, but you have to kind of force yourself to be there and to turn up on time. I think that's more important than motivation.
Okay, yeah, I would completely agree with that. There's a phrase I like saying that motivation is a myth. Essentially that, and the thing I like to tell myself is that I should be trying to scrub the word motivation from my vocabulary as much as I can. Because anytime I think I'm not motivated to do X, that is such an unhelpful thought process.
Yeah, it's almost like the concept of potential. It's like if you assign yourself a potential, that is an imaginary quantity. There is the work you are doing and have done. There is no such thing as like your hard potential that you have. In a way, it doesn't exist other than in your head.
Oh, yeah.
So if you abolish the concept, then you're not worried about not living up to your potential, and it stops that anxiety. So eliminate potential and eliminate motivation.
Fantastic. The other phrase I want to eliminate is the phrase "I don't have time for whatever," because I always try and reframe it as I'm actively choosing not to make the time for whatever.
I have other priorities.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how do you bring yourself to kind of force yourself to do stuff? Have you got any kind of tips that you find helpful?
I think for me at least, it has to be about routine. It has to be you are in a regular routine which can be spatial and it can be temporal. Ideally both. Like you get up at a certain time and you will be at this coffee shop or this library at a certain time, and then it separates out that as your work domain from your life, where you're living your life in, if you're at uni, in your dorm or wherever that may be. Having that, it's almost like being at school. You know, you're like, I am in this classroom at this time because on a Wednesday at 1:00 I have double maths kind of thing, and so you're in that mindset, and you didn't have a problem with it at school for 7 years or however long it is. Well, I didn't, maybe you did. Well, we were both pretty, dorky. We have both done several years of university and voluntarily done more.
Yeah, because it's fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a big part of how I kind of motivate myself to study, because I do genuinely enjoy it. And I think one thing that helps me enjoy it more is the fact that I also kind of do some teaching on the side. Yeah. And so in a way, whenever I'm studying, it's sort of with the view that, okay, I need to be able to teach this to my friends and to people in the year below at some point, which gives it more of a motive rather than I'm preparing for this exam that's several months or years into the future that will only loosely dictate my job or whatever.
I mean, I think the other thing is, as well as being sort of timetabling yourself, to have a regular schedule, I think the other thing for me is that I have to schedule in time when I'm not going to work. Because if you have infinite time, the task just expands to fill the time. And so you're like, oh, I've got all day to do this. I'll get it done. And it allows you to be lazy. Whereas if you say, I'm going to go at 3:00 to the gym, or I'm going to go and meet up with a friend at this time every Wednesday, for example, it means you only have that much time. You have a hard upper limit. And so it means that, you have to get this stuff done in that time. Otherwise, you're not going to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the constraints are really important. And I've noticed, especially nowadays when I'm preparing for physiology supervisions that I'm doing, because I have to fit that time in between kind of my actual job as a doctor and the kind of hanging out with friends and kind of making YouTube videos and stuff. So it's like, right, I've got this 2-hour window where I need to crank out these next 3 lectures. Yeah. And therefore it just has to get done.
I found it easier, to edit YouTube videos when I was doing the PhD than now, because when I was doing the PhD, I would get home at 8 or 9 and be like, right, well, if I want to get a video out, I've got to do it by 12 tonight. Whereas now I can wake up and be like, well, today we're going to make a video about, I don't know, we'll crack something out at some point. Like, if you have that real time pressure, you get much more done.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, there was a day a few months ago where I had like 2 days off work, and I'd planned to film like 10 videos across those 2 days, and I got them all done, and it was incredible. But on days where I only have to film 1 video, I end up procrastinating for so long, and it gets to the end of the day, I'm like, why haven't I filmed this video yet?
Yeah.
I think it's probably a similar thing with studying, just sort of forcing yourself to kind of time block it, and then
Yeah. I would have done better at undergrad if I'd actually done more extracurricular activities, because it would have put more time constraints on my work. Whereas as it was, I was like, this whole day is for studying, and that meant that there was no structure, and I didn't do as well as I think I could have done otherwise.
Fantastic. So it sounds like what we're saying in answer to the question, how do you motivate yourself to study, is that firstly, you don't think about it in terms of motivation, you develop the discipline, the habits to do it. You've said it's really helpful to kind of go to coffee shops, go somewhere that's not your home.
Yeah,
definitely. If you're at university, go to the library. Don't stay in your room, because your room is sacred space.
And put constraints.
Yes, absolutely. Having a certain amount of time where you have to get a certain amount of things done, it's not an option.
Yeah.
So question number 2 is, how do you stay focused while studying? And that comes from thedabbler_24. Thank you, The Dabbler.
Ooh, I am terrible at this. I will be completely honest. I get distracted very easily. So I find that I'm most focused when I remove as many distractions as possible. So when I'm writing a script for a YouTube video, I have a 2-screen setup, and I find it all too easy to have a video playing on the other screen, because I'm like, oh, well, it makes me feel like I'm not really working, but my attention is constantly being divided. It would be too easy to have like another web page that I was using for research, but I'm not actively looking at up. So what I tend to do is have something like Spotify open, so it removes that screen as a distraction. I also think you have to accept that you're not going to stay focused for hours and hours at a time. I don't know if you do this, but I will find that I'll be working for maybe 45 minutes, and then it's almost like you kind of wake up and you're like, oh wow, hang on, I was really in there for a while. Like, I need to get up and like do something, because it's like you recognize that was your natural limit for focus.
Yeah, I have exactly the same thing. Like I tried using the Pomodoro method at some point.
It's worked for me. Like Forest is a good app that I found when I was writing my thesis. Actually, that was really useful. Okay. But sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, no. So like I find that about 45 minutes is kind of the upper limit of my kind of natural sort of fully in the zone.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when I'm filming study with me videos, I realize, oh wow, I was actually just doing this for 45 minutes and not realizing it.
Yeah.
But then for me at least, it gets to that point where I can sense my mind beginning to wander, and at that point I think, oh, okay, let's get up, make a cup of coffee, make a cup of tea. Yeah. Go to the bathroom, do something.
We're not robots. So at the end of the day, we have a natural need, I think, to, vary the task that we're doing. So when it comes to staying focused, you've got to accept that you're not going to be focused the whole time. I think in a way, you actually have to kind of employ a mindfulness technique where you're aware, when you're doing mindfulness meditation, you are concentrating on the breath, but the kind of description is moment to moment non-judgmental awareness. That's kind of like mindfulness in a nutshell.
What does that mean?
So the idea is that you're just sat there kind of like paying attention to how your body feels or how you're breathing. And if your mind wanders, the important thing is not to say, I'm an idiot, I need to be focusing on nothing. You say, oh, okay, my mind wandered, that's okay, but let's now think about breathing again. And it's that non-judgmental awareness aspect of it. The fact that I think when you're studying, you have to recognize, oh, hang on, I got distracted, but that's okay, because like that's a natural thing to do. You don't want to shame yourself into thinking, oh God, I should never get distracted. No, it's a natural thing. You just have to kind of bring your attention back to what you're doing and say, if it's important, I'll get to that in 10 minutes, and return your attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think that's a big part of why, I certainly used to struggle with focus back in the day, and I would lose focus, and then I would kind of beat myself up about it. But I guess I kind of naturally stopped beating myself up about it. I was like, oh yeah, well, fair enough.
It happens.
Focus 15 minutes. Who cares? I'll take a break now. And I think just kind of not stick, sort of partly having a certain amount of time to do stuff in, but also not being too harsh on myself when I lost focus and kind of looked at my phone or something.
Yeah. Well, because it's a negative feedback. When you get distracted, you will think, oh, I'm an idiot, and then get back to it. And then when it happens again, you're only going to get more and more frustrated. And it means that you are going to associate studying with those negative emotions. So it's important it's just in terms of like a feedback cycle, to not have that negative component to it. And to just neutrally, not in a positive way, think, oh, great, I got distracted again. Like, you've got to neutrally just be like, no, let's put our attention back to what we're doing.
So do you use any tactics to not get this, like self-control apps or anything like that, or do you not really need to?
I've never used anything like those extensions that stop you from going on Facebook or whatever. I'm not saying that I wouldn't benefit from it, but I seem to have found a good medium where I am at the moment, right? I do get distracted from time to time, and certainly when you work for yourself as a YouTuber, there are whole days when you think, man, I've done like nothing today. But I think for the most part, I'm at a happy level with it, in terms of just self-discipline and also sometimes rolling with being distracted. So I'll be like, oh, hang on, I'm just gonna let's just do this, and then I'll quickly update my finance spreadsheet or update a thumbnail or write a quick email, because you think, well, I'm being distracted, but let's turn that into a productive thing, and then we'll come back to it. Less possible when you're studying, I know, but for me, I seem to have found this system that kind of works.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I don't really use any of these apps either. One thing I do is I turn my phone face down.
I do that, yes,
and
absolutely.
That just immediately eliminates, Slack notifications, tweet notifications, this person's like your...
Well, I also turned off most notifications. I don't have any Facebook or Twitter or Instagram notifications, I think, on my phone. It is the bare minimum of, if something is really desperately needing to get my attention, it will tell me. Yeah. But for Twitter in particular, I used to be on Twitter way more than I am now. When I just removed notifications from popping up, it cut down on the number of distractions per hour by, I don't even want to know. Yeah, literally.
The other thing I find helpful for focusing is I've got a kind of study with me playlist on Spotify, which is just like instrumental film music, bangers from Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean. And if I have my headphones on, I'm like,
it's
Jack
fine.
Sparrow.
And I think you have to have like a stable of those. Like I'll have like a Tron Legacy is a really good one to work to. I find things with words quite distracting.
Yeah, okay.
So like, because I'm a singer, I used to sing a lot of choral works, and so I would listen to them, especially if I was trying to learn a piece of music. But now I'm like, I just find myself either singing along or paying more attention to the words than I am to my music. To my work. So yeah, like lo-fi beats, as you would find everywhere on YouTube with that one GIF of the girl. You know the one I mean.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Instrumental soundtracks. I find game soundtracks really good because they're meant to be played alongside, you focusing on something else. But something like SimCity or The Sims or City Skylines, I've got really good soundtracks that, they're meant to just kind of occupy the back of your brain whilst you're focusing on something else.
Now, have you got public Spotify playlists that have these in them?
I actually have a public YouTube playlist.
Oh, fantastic. We'll link that
we can put that down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure that everything in there is technically legal, but I didn't upload it, so it's fine.
Yeah, there's actually a video I'm working on at the moment called Should You Study with Music? And so we've done a whole literature review and stuff about this, and it seems to suggest that music with words interferes with the phonological loop part of our working memory, and therefore you can't really focus on those two things at once.
Yeah.
Music, like instrumental music, is sort of it's all right, and studying in silence is actually the best option because evidence shows that we retain stuff better when we are being tested on it in the same sort of atmosphere that we learned it in. So they've done studies where they've made people learn a series of words underwater and then test them underwater, and they do better than the people who learned it on land and tested underwater. Along with different sort of conditions. It'd
be kind of great if you get to an exam and they're just like, okay, and your time starts now, and then the music from the Lord of the Rings just starts.
You're like, yes.
There's the next 3.5 hours.
But then kind of going back to our main question about focus, I find that even though I know that listening to music at all is probably slightly suboptimal, I think overall it just massively increases my own enjoyment and my own focus. So I'm happy to take the productivity hit.
It's a bit like when you go to the gym, I find that I obsess over trying to make the optimal strategy, and you think this particular superset, and I'm going to do it this many times a week. At the end of the day, the best gym strategy is the one that you do. You will get the most health benefit if you actually go to the gym. And the same with studying, the best study routine is the one that you actually do. So if you make something actively unpleasant by being in silence for 8 hours a day, you're not going to want to do it. So integrate that over time. You're going to miss sessions because you just can't bring yourself to do it. If you make it a pleasant environment, you're going to get more good out of it.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of kind of developing the motivation or discipline, whatever you want to call it, just making it a more enjoyable experience. And I find kind of the soundtrack does that. Going to a library, going to a nice coffee shop. If I've got an exam to prepare for, I kind of budget I'm happy to spend £20 today on just lattes, just to sort of increase the pleasantness of the experience. And I think that really helps.
Yeah, that's nice. I like the idea of having a budget for it. This is my self-care budget for this session.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so next we've got sort of a few friction reduction type things. So how do you turn off the holiday mood, says _Galaxy Han. Right after you take a long break and the school semester is about to start, how do you turn off the holiday mood?
Ooh.
And Afra Yusuf asks directly, what are some ways to reduce the friction to studying?
I find that I have kind of almost like a Swiss Army knife. You have different modes, and you kind of have to consciously flick from, bottle opener mode to corkscrew mode or to cutting knife mode, and my brain will be in a certain pattern. So it could be in the holiday pattern of I'm going to wake up and I'm just going to do whatever I feel like doing, or I will be in the mode of I get up, I start working at 9 and I stop when I get to 6. And I find that I can't switch modes if I keep everything else in my environment the same. So if I have been at home, for example, at the holidays, and say you've been home for Christmas, then you have a couple of, say 2 weeks, nice and relaxed, and you're just switched your brain off. You can't expect yourself to then start work immediately whilst you're staying in that same environment at home where you have recently been relaxed. You need to, if you want to do work, for example, get out of the house, go to a coffee shop or go to a library. I am all about changing the environment. And also it can be changing spatially, but also changing temporally. So, changing the time that you get up. So you force yourself to be in a new time that you weren't in earlier. Say you got up at 9 or 10 in the morning at home because it's Christmas and, whatever. But if you get up at 7 or 8 in the morning, it's a different time, you're in a different place, then you can sort of switch modes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's really important. Like I realized this at university, because during term time I would completely fall behind on everything that was going on because it was just 8 weeks long. But then in the holidays, every morning I would get up, I'd have breakfast at home, and then I would take the bus to go to the local library in Southend. Like Southend Library was my jam. And then I'd go there and just kind of be there all day and be working all day. And then some school friends of mine, when they finish uni, they would join library sessions. And it would just be really fun. Like we'd be kind of working around the same table, but obviously doing our own different things. But just that switching of atmosphere made it really a lot easier to get work done then. I think one thing that I also do to kind of reduce the friction to studying is having my books and stuff sort of in an accessible location. And I only really started to appreciate this kind of towards the end of university, because before I used to have like my textbook or whatever kind of on a bookshelf across the room from me. And just kind of moving the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine over to my desk.
It's just removing that bit of friction.
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah. And then later on when I started putting everything on my iPad, at that point it completely eliminated friction, because now all of my textbooks were in pirated PDF form on my iPad in Notability.
At least you're honest.
And therefore, anywhere I was, if I was in a lecture that was particularly boring, I could do some work. If I was on the bus, if I was on the toilet, if I wanted to, I could just open up Notability, and there was no friction to doing that.
Because I found that with my work recently, when I've moved everything over to Notion, before, if I wanted to check on the ideas that I had for videos and where I was at, I'd have to go between Google Calendar for like when I was planning to release, and then Google Docs for where the actual scripts were. And now I just have it all in a database. If I think, oh, hang on, what am I doing again next month? Bring it up. I can access everything I want in one place. I've been making, I think, smarter decisions and doing more work on those concepts because it's just been that bit easier to have it all in one place. So again, I feel like keeping everything centralized in terms of whether that's like physical books, having it close to you, or the information, and you can kind of make it work with any one app, I guess. Yeah. But as long as you keep it all centralized in one place, then it makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one other thing I find helpful is making sure my desk is clean. Because I find that if my desk is untidy, there's so much friction to sitting on my desk, because I'm just like, oh, I've got to deal with this. So now what I do is, like, in a way, it's almost part of my study routine or my being productive routine, that I will put an audiobook on these days. The Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. It's very good. I'll put an audiobook on, I'll clean the desk, make a coffee, and that would be part of the kind of getting into it.
It's like a ritual, yeah, exactly.
And then the desk is clean, and I'm like, all right, now this is an inspiring atmosphere to sit down.
But do you find yourself sometimes you finish the ritual? Because for me, it would be like check emails, have a Coke Zero, like put something on Spotify, and then you think, what am I doing? Like, there's like that pause between the ritual being finished and then actually flowing into the work. So how do you stop there being that like disjoint between the two?
Oh, so I found a trick for this recently, and it's called the daily highlight, which is that every day, again on Notion, I've got this like Life OS thing where I have like a daily check-in template, which every day asks me the question, what's the one highlight what's the one thing you want to work on today? And when that's done, what are 2 more things that you might get around to if you have the time?
Right.
And so if I need to do work like prepare for a supervision or something, my one highlight will be prepare for tomorrow's physiology supervision. And therefore, I kind of know in the back of my mind that that's the only thing I actually need to get done today. And I find that having that just really helps in terms of sitting down and doing the thing.
Because then it's not overwhelming. You have like one task and you see there's no question. You're like, well, let's crack on. Because I find that when I'm editing videos, it's like, right, I just know that I need to finish this edit this morning. And it's like, even if it takes all morning, it suddenly doesn't feel like that much work because it's one task and that's it. The day's work has been accomplished and everything from that point is a bonus. Even if it's not you've actually planned to do that work on that day, it still feels like a bonus. So, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then in terms of other things for reducing friction, I think like when I have like a pot of pens on my desk. That always has pens and highlighters in it. So if I always have like a pucker pad of A4.
Yeah, always have a notebook.
It's just stuff that is easily within reach, so that you don't have to do anything extra to get started.
Yeah,
and I kind of wish I had that more for YouTube videos, because it's so much friction getting all this set up.
Yeah, this was about an hour's worth of setup. We've got a lot of cameras here.
Cameras going on.
Yeah, you need your own office.
It's got to be done. When Molly moves out, that's when it's going to happen.
Oh God, Molly's just such a friction.
Exactly.
She's not watching this, is she?
She probably won't. It's fine.